Let's face it, a man isn't judged just by what he does, but by what comes out of his mouth, and a stupid man, he gives himself away with every word. Today, I'm breaking down 6 things that a stupid man always says. And if you catch yourself saying them, it's time to level up, before life humbles you. It's not my fault. These 4 words might seem harmless, but they reveal everything you need to know about a man's mindset. It's the go-to line for someone who has built his identity around avoidance, denial, and weakness. The moment a man says this, what he's really communicating is, I don't want to be held accountable. I want someone else to carry the burden of my life. He's rejecting the core principle of masculinity ownership, because responsibility is not a burden, it's a privilege. It's what gives a man power over his circumstances. When you say it's not your fault, you're handing that power over to someone else. You're telling the world that you're just a passenger in your own life, being tossed around by external forces. Stupid men blame everyone and everything but themselves. They'll blame their ex for ruining their trust, the economy for ruining their ambition, their parents for ruining their childhood, and society for not giving them a fair shot. But a high-value man understands that life is unfair by design, and that his job isn't to cry about it, but to conquer it. Even when it isn't your fault, even when someone did screw you over, you still choose to say, I take responsibility, not because you enjoy pain, but because that's how you take control. It's the only way to stay sharp, adaptable, and resilient. The stupid man stays in denial, stuck in the same cycles, repeating the same mistakes, always wondering why nothing changes. He surrounds himself with people who validate his excuses, who coddle his feelings, and who help him build a story where he's always the victim and never the author. But the world doesn't reward victims, it rewards warriors, and warriors don't wait for perfect conditions or fair treatment. They take what's theirs, they own every choice, every consequence, and every outcome, because they know that responsibility is the gateway to freedom. If you ever hear yourself say, it's not my fault, stop, because you're one step away from becoming the very man life will forget. That's just how I am. This phrase is one of the most dangerous lies a man can tell himself. On the surface it sounds like honesty. It sounds like someone accepting who they are. But in reality it's a shield for mediocrity. When a man says this, he isn't being authentic. He's being lazy. He's using identity as an excuse to stop evolving. It's what stupid men say when they don't want to confront the discomfort of change, when they've grown attached to their flaws and wrapped their ego around them like a security blanket. A man who's quick-tempered, emotionally unavailable, irresponsible, or undisciplined will defend those flaws by saying, that's just how I am, as if those traits are written in his DNA and there's no way out. But this mindset keeps him stuck in a version of himself that the world doesn't respect, that women don't admire, and that deep down he doesn't even like. He convinces himself that staying the same is noble, that being real is more important than becoming better. But authenticity without evolution is just stagnation. A high-value man doesn't cling to his current self. He constantly builds toward his future self. He identifies weaknesses and doesn't excuse them. He works on them. He doesn't say, that's just how I am. He says, that's who I used to be, and here's who I'm becoming. The stupid man, on the other hand, fears growth because growth requires discomfort. Growth forces him to be honest with himself, to admit that maybe the person he's become isn't the best he could be, And that's terrifying for someone who's built his identity around being unchangeable. But the truth is, masculinity isn't about being stuck. It's about transformation. It's about rejecting the idea that you were born with limits. Every time a man says, "That's just how I am," he's drawing a line around his potential and locking himself in a mental prison. That phrase isn't a statement of truth. It's a decision to quit on yourself, and the man who quits on himself is already lost. She's out of my league. This one sentence reveals so much about how a man sees himself and how little he understands about attraction. It's a phrase soaked in insecurity, wrapped in self-doubt, and delivered by a man who has already lost before the game even started. When a man says, "She's out of my league," what he's really doing is putting her on a pedestal while digging a grave for his own confidence. He's not complimenting her, he's degrading himself. He's allowing looks, social status, or popularity to intimidate him into silence and inaction. And this mindset doesn't just affect his dating life. It bleeds into every part of who he is. Because if you think someone is too good for you, you've already admitted you're not good enough. A stupid man sees a beautiful woman and immediately assumes she lives in another universe, one where guys like him can't possibly exist. He measures himself by shallow standards, her makeup, her clothes, her Instagram following, her lifestyle, and compares that to his own insecurities. But the truth is this: women are not attracted to perfection. They are drawn to presence. They don't want a man who grovels or idolizes them. They want a man who respects himself so deeply that he doesn't flinch, even when she's the most stunning woman in the room. The man who says, "She's out of my league," doesn't understand that leagues are imaginary. They're created by weak men to justify why they don't take action. And the more you believe in them, the more you solidify your position at the bottom. Confidence isn't about being arrogant. It's about not being shaken. It's about knowing your worth, regardless of who's standing in front of you. A woman can sense that energy. She can feel it the moment you walk into a room. And when you treat her like a normal human being, when you don't orbit her or drool or fold, she notices, because most men crumble under beauty. Most men overthink, overcompensate, or overcommit. But the man who walks in grounded, who's on his mission, who doesn't need her to feel validated, that's the man who captures attention. That's the man who builds gravity. Stupid men leave their lives waiting for permission. They wait for signs, for signals, for guarantees, and when they don't get any, they retreat. She's too pretty, they say. She's probably taken. She'd never go for someone like me. These are the voices of defeat. These are the internal whispers of a man who hasn't built himself into someone he respects. Because when you become a man of value, a man who has purpose, discipline, style, awareness, and presence, you don't ask if she's in your league. You decide whether she fits into your life. You flip the frame. You stop chasing approval and start commanding it. And once you do, you'll realize no woman was ever out of your league. You were just playing by the wrong rule. I don't care. These 3 words are spoken by men who want to appear strong but are actually crumbling underneath. On the surface, it sounds cold, detached, and unfazed. But dig deeper, and you'll find a scared, emotionally immature man hiding behind indifference. When a stupid man says, "I don't care," what he's really doing is trying to protect his fragile ego. He's been hurt, rejected, or disappointed so many times that he's built an armor of apathy around himself. But here's the truth. The man who pretends not to care is the one who cares the most, and is simply too afraid to admit it. He says, "I don't care," when a woman ghosts him, but he checks his phone 10 times an hour. He says, "I don't care," when someone disrespects him, but it eats at him for days. He says, "I don't care," when life doesn't go his way, but deep down he feels lost, angry, and ashamed. The problem isn't that he doesn't care. The problem is he lacks the strength to process and express his emotions in a healthy, grounded way. Real emotional mastery isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about controlling your reactions. And that's something the stupid man never learns, because he thinks detachment means ignoring everything. But in reality, indifference is often just emotional cowardice in disguise. Hi, Val, you man doesn't need to pretend he's numb. He does care about his time, his energy, his future, his boundaries. But he knows when something is not worth a reaction. He can feel pain without becoming paralyzed by it. He can lose without losing himself. He chooses what deserves his attention. And that's real power. The stupid man, on the other hand, reacts to every challenge by acting like it doesn't bother him. He wants people to think he's above it all. But in doing so, he becomes passive, disconnected, and emotionally hollow. And women can feel this too. No woman respects a man who hides behind "I don't care." They crave emotional strength, not emotional absence. When a man constantly says, "I don't care," he's not proving strength. He's exposing weakness. He's revealing that he doesn't have the emotional tools to handle reality like a mature, grounded man. And worst of all, he's training himself to become numb. And numbness doesn't protect you. It destroys you from the inside out. Life stops being meaningful when you stop caring. Relationships crumble, purpose fades, and passion dies. All because one man thought being untouchable was the same as being unbreakable. But there's a difference. A man who is truly unbreakable doesn't shut down. He sharpens, he feels the pressure and uses it. He doesn't say, "I don't care." He says, "I care enough not to be controlled by this." That's emotional intelligence. That's inner strength, something the stupid man may never understand. Money isn't everything. This phrase is repeated like a mantra by men who have failed to build anything meaningful for themselves. It's used as a shield, a moral high ground, a way to comfort the mediocrity they've accepted. But let's be clear, only a man who doesn't have money keeps trying to convince the world that it doesn't matter. Stupid men twist this phrase into a life philosophy, but the truth is, they're using it as an excuse not to grind, not to sacrifice, not to discipline themselves into financial independence. Because let's be honest, money may not buy happiness, but poverty sure as hell guarantees stress, limits, and dependence. When a man says money isn't everything, what he's really doing is exposing his comfort with being average. He wants to make peace with being broke because the work required to change that scares him. He calls rich men greedy, calls ambition toxic, and claims to value simplicity, not because he genuinely prefers a minimalist life, but because he's trying to justify why he's never pushed harder. The stupid man convinces himself that wanting more is evil, that aiming for financial freedom is shallow. But the irony is, the man who truly values peace, freedom, and dignity should be the one chasing money, because money buys all three. Money gives you options, it gives you time, it gives you control over your environment, your schedule, your health, your safety, and your family's future. It gives you the ability to walk away from toxic relationships, dead-end jobs, and dangerous situations. It gives you power in a world that does not care about your good intentions unless they are backed by leverage, and that leverage often comes from money. The stupid man ignores all this. He keeps playing life on hard mode, convinced he's being noble. But nobility without strategy is just self-sabotage dressed up in pride. The worst part, this mindset keeps him small. He never builds, never invests, never thinks long term. He spends what little he has to feel rich for a moment, and then goes right back to complaining about how unfair the system is. He calls wealthy people lucky, never seeing the years of sacrifice behind the scenes. He laughs at men who work hard, calling them sellouts or slaves to the system, while he scrolls through his phone for hours, contributing nothing to his own future. He doesn't understand that masculinity isn't just about physical strength. It's about the ability to provide, to protect, to create legacy, and none of that is possible without resources. The man who constantly says money isn't everything ends up chasing temporary highs, approval from friends, cheap entertainment, fast pleasure, because deep down he knows he's not building anything that lasts. He's not stacking. He's not investing in himself. He's not making moves, and that's why life keeps him boxed in, but he tells himself it's okay. He says, at least I'm happy, or at least I'm real, as if those things require you to stay broke, but happiness without security is unstable. Realness without growth is just stagnation. And when the bills pile up, when the pressure comes, when people are depending on him, suddenly money starts to matter real fast. So the next time a man says money isn't everything, listen carefully, not to his words, but to what his life looks like, because the loudest critics of money are often the ones who have never learned how to master it. And mastery requires humility, work, sacrifice, and time. 4 things a stupid man avoids at all costs. I'll do it later. These are the last words of potential before it dies. This one sentence has killed more dreams, more goals, and more greatness than failure ever has. It's the anthem of procrastination, the sweet, seductive lullaby that comforts the lazy and the fearful. When a man says, "I'll do it later," what he's really saying is, "I'm not serious about my growth." Stupid men live in this illusion of infinite time. They treat life like there will always be more chances, more tomorrows, more opportunities waiting for them. But time is ruthless, and the man who delays action is the man who slowly, quietly erodes his own future without even realizing it. This mindset is deadly because it disguises itself as logic. I just need to be in the right headspace. I'll start the business when the market is better. I'll cut her off after one more conversation. I'll hit the gym after I finish this one project. These all sound reasonable, but they're just sophisticated lies the mind tells itself to avoid the discomfort of action. A stupid man convinces himself that tomorrow will be a better time to get disciplined, to start healing, to stop chasing women who don't value him, to begin building something real. But tomorrow doesn't come, not in the way he hopes, because the habit of delay is addictive. The more you feed it, the more natural it feels to push everything off to another day. And before you know it, years pass, and you're still the same man, just older, more bitter, and full of regret. The dangerous part is, men who live by "I'll do it later" often believe they're thinkers, planners, visionaries. They have all the right ideas, all the knowledge, all the potential, but no execution. They talk a lot about what they're going to do, but they never follow through. They romanticize their future, but disrespect their present, and they can't figure out why they feel stuck, why they're constantly anxious, angry, or empty. It's because deep down, they know they're betraying themselves every single day. Every moment of hesitation chips away at their self-respect. They see themselves procrastinating, making excuses, wasting time, and they begin to stop trusting their own word. That's what makes this so dangerous. It doesn't just delay your results, it destroys your identity. A man who constantly says, "I'll do it later," is training his mind to associate inaction with safety, and action that becomes foreign, uncomfortable, almost impossible. He becomes a master of avoidance. He avoids responsibility, accountability, confrontation, and commitment. He starts projects but never finishes. He reads books but never applies them. He gets inspired but never transforms. His life becomes a series of restarts, constantly resetting, constantly making new plans, constantly waiting for that perfect time. But there is no perfect time, there never was. Life rewards action, not thought, not intention, not potential, action. Meanwhile, time keeps moving, the world keeps spinning. The men who decided to act, even when it wasn't perfect, who went to the gym tired, who left that toxic woman despite missing her, who started that business with just a rough plan, they are building momentum. They're gaining confidence, stacking results, and becoming dangerous, while the man who said, "I'll do it later," is left behind, watching, regretting, wishing, but by then it's too late. Not because time ran out, but because he trained himself to never begin. That's the tragedy of procrastination. It doesn't steal your time, it steals your belief in yourself. And without that belief, a man becomes hollow, full of potential but paralyzed, alive but not really living. So if you found yourself saying any of these things, "It's not my fault," "That's just how I am," "She's out of my league," "I don't care," "Money isn't everything," or "I'll do it later," understand this. These aren't just words. They are warning signs, markers of a mindset that will hold you back, weaken your character, and waste your potential. A stupid man repeats them without thought. A wise man recognizes them, rejects them, and replaces them with action, ownership, and growth. Because at the end of the day, your words shape your reality. Speak like a man who's building something. Live like a man who refuses to be average. And think like a man who knows the difference between excuses and truth.